At 7:20 in the morning self-study bell of class 37 in the senior year rang on time, breaking the quiet of the teaching building. The whole building was instantly filled with the sound of students reading aloud. Sunlight streamed through the west floor-to-ceiling window, slanting onto the neatly arranged desks, and dust motes drifted slowly in the beam of light. Everything was exactly the same as that unforgettable morning 3 years ago. I raised my hand to sweep across the high school mock exam laid out on the desk. The header, exam date, subject arrangement, and paper layout were all precise. This was the ultimate mock exam that changed the entire trajectory of my life. In that moment, I firmly confirmed that I had been reborn to the second half of senior year. Just the day before the school-wide mock exam's morning reading, in my previous life, that day marked the beginning of my collapse. In this crucial mock exam, the school belle Aurora secretly used a micro-earpiece to cheat, copying answers from outside the exam hall to win first place in the grade. After the exam, she betrayed me, pinning all the cheating suspicion on me. She used the class's block-like support, the teacher's favorable impression of her, and my usual quiet and reticent persona to portray me as a despicable student who attempted to cheat the top students' answers and, once exposed, maliciously shifted the blame onto others. The final result was that I was publicly criticized by the entire school. My high school entrance exam extra points were cancelled, and I was recorded in the integrity archive. I endured the last tens of days of senior year under the stigma of a cheater. With a poor performance in the college entrance exam and missing the university I had set my heart on. Meanwhile, the instigator Aurora, with her clean public image and the trust of classmates and teachers, remained unscathed and smoothly entered a top university, carrying a glamorous resume and a worry-free path. From the right side of the desk came the faint sounds of pages turning. Aurora sat upright in the third row by the window, her long black hair tied into an exquisite high ponytail. Her white school uniform shirt was pressed neat, her side profile soft, eyes kind, and her fingers slender and pale as she held the textbook. She bowed her head slightly to read the text silently, her posture graceful and well-behaved. Even just the silhouette was enough to win the admiration of most of the surrounding students. Many eyes in the classroom fixed on her, some admiring, some envious. Kyle, a boy sitting in front of me, turned around first, clutching a Chinese language material notebook in his hand, his tone dripping with deliberate flattery. Aurora heard the sound, looked up, lightly curved her lips, and responded with 2 soft sentences, her tone gentle and proper, perfectly matching the image in everyone's mind of a good girl, an outstanding student, and the perfect class belle. Seeing this, the surrounding students gathered around, forming small clusters near Aurora's desk. Some asked for Chinese poetry translations, some asked about the key points for mock exam revision, and some offered to help tidy up scattered papers and notes. In just a few minutes, Aurora's desk area was surrounded by admirers. And those people were the same classmates who had watched me be framed in front of the whole class without a single person to defend me, even stepping in to kick me when I was down in the previous life. They clearly knew that Aurora often relied on various niche devices to take shortcuts, and they knew her grades were not as solid as they appeared. But because Aurora was good at winning people over, being generous, and organizing momentum, everyone chose to turn a blind eye. Conversely, because I was introverted, didn't like to socialize, and had no connections, everyone assumed the one at fault would be me, and the weak me would become the scapegoat. I lowered my eyes and opened the textbook in my hand, my fingertips brushing the clearly printed text in a calm, natural motion, indistinguishable from the other students bowing their heads for the morning reading. My gaze swept precisely over the gap in Aurora's desk drawer, where she kept her secret gear that she never disclosed, an ultra-miniature bone conduction earphone designed to fit the ear bone. The earphone was extremely small, worn tucked between hair and the ear shell, almost invisible to the naked eye. And it was her core reliance for consistently achieving top scores in major exams. In the previous life, I never exposed this secret of hers until I was punished and expelled. First, there was no conclusive evidence. Second, no one in the class was willing to believe me. And third, I never expected that the girl who seems gentle and harmless on the surface would, to protect her own reputation, ruin someone else's life without hesitation. But this time of reincarnation, all the vague details become incredibly clear. I clearly remember that this micro earpiece has a deadly exclusive flaw, a hidden defect left by the manufacturer during customization, something only those who have long-term contact and precise control of device parameters can detect. Under normal wearing and use, there's no anomaly. But as long as multiple devices receive the same frequency band simultaneously, signal interference, frequency band conflicts, and high-frequency hiss leakage occur, the more device is worn, the more thoroughly the flaw is triggered, ultimately triggering the exam room's professional signal detection system alert. What's more crucial is that this set of devices is Aurora's exclusive custom model, not available on the market, and the sole user record tied to the device from start to finish belongs to her alone. The morning rush is still loud. The homeroom teacher, Mr. White, steps into the classroom in low-heeled shoes, surveying the class's morning reading status. His gaze lingers on Aurora for a moment, eyes full of praise and acknowledgement, and he casually reminds them, tomorrow's full-length mock exam is the final real practice before the college entrance exam. The grading standards and exam room rules are aligned with the Gaokao. Cheating will be strictly investigated. The whole school will use signal jammers and portable signal scanners. If cheating is found, it will be filed in the records with no leniency. Everyone, maintain proper attitude, study seriously, and don't harbor any luckiness. As soon as his words fall, a faint response ripples through the room. Many students look nervous, lowering their heads to study harder. Only Aurora remains calm, still composed, even smiling as she looks up to respond to the teacher, her tone obedient and sincere. Teacher, don't worry. We'll strictly follow exam room rules, treat every test seriously, and answer with our own abilities. This remark makes Mr. White even more satisfied, nodding repeatedly, and the surrounding students echo the praise, lauding Aurora as self-disciplined and solid. A role model for the class. Nobody knows that at this moment, she is already prepared for tomorrow's exam with foolproof cheating, and nobody knows that I have already finalized a complete plan for revenge. I still lower my head to look at my textbook, the corners of my lips quietly lifting in a restrained smile. In my past life, she made me bear all the stigma alone, fall to the bottom, and ruin my future. This time, I will make everyone who colluded with her, supported her, or watched with indifference pay the price. Since she sits atop the throne with this micro earpiece, and because the whole class is biased in her favor to act recklessly, I will turn this exclusive shortcut into the abyss for everyone. I will make the entire class use her cheating earphone, drag everyone into this cheating storm, and let her self-built perfect persona and academic aura collapse on the very exam tomorrow. The 40 minutes of morning reading pass slowly. As the class period nears its end, Aurora lifts a strand of hair at her ear. A seemingly casual gesture, but actually to confirm the spare device of the earphone is intact. She turns sideways to her close friend Zoe and chats softly, her tone filled with unwavering confidence, hinting at a firm grasp of tomorrow's exam. The early morning bell rang for dismissal, and the classroom instantly shed its orderly sound of studying. Instead, it was replaced by noisy conversations and footsteps. A large crowd poured out of the room, rushing to the corridor to get some air. The hallways were noisy, with people moving in every direction, the perfect setting for covert actions and deceiving others. I followed the flow of people out of the classroom, my steps neither slow nor fast, precisely landing at the moment Aurora and Zoe walked out side by side. I turned slightly, stopping by the railing in the hallway, with my back to the lower playground, deliberately waiting for them to draw closer before I stepped forward. Aurora wore a clean school uniform, her eyes and brows carrying her usual gentle smile. When greeted by passing students, she responded politely, maintaining an impeccable image as the class beauty. Zoe walked closely beside her, her gaze carrying a sense of superiority as she swept her eyes over the people in the corridor. In my previous life, these two had crushed my last two sharp blades in senior year. Aurora feigned innocence to frame me. Zoe led the rumor-mongering, inciting the whole class to isolate me, leaving me to face cold looks and criticism during the most difficult exam preparation period. This time, I will not yield even a millimeter. I spoke up, my tone calm and humble, with just the right amount of coaxing, exactly as an ordinary student asking a top student for help would. Aurora, how are you preparing for tomorrow's mock exam? I've been on a bad streak lately. Many question types elude me. I'm feeling especially anxious. My proactive approach caused both of them to stop. Aurora raised an eyebrow slightly, a trace of surprise flashing in her eyes. In the class's established impression, I've always been aloof and taciturn, never actively clinging to anyone, and I certainly wouldn't bow my head to ask her for help. Zoe immediately hissed with blunt contempt. What's the use of worrying now, if you don't work hard? Cramming at the last minute won't help, Lyra. Your grades have always been at the bottom. No matter how you revise, you won't catch up to Aurora. I didn't argue, continuing to look at Aurora, maintaining a humble posture of asking for help. I know my foundation is weak and I can't keep up with everyone, but this mock exam is too important. I don't want to completely tank it. If you have any shortcut or study tips, could you share them with me just this once? Aurora stared at me for a couple of seconds, seeing the earnest plea in my eyes and lowering her guard completely. She has always enjoyed the sense of superiority that comes from being revered and pursued by others. The more someone bowed their head to her, the more she lowered her guard. She sighed softly, speaking softly. There's no shortcut to exams. It's all about steady accumulation, but you seem truly anxious this time, so I can help you a little. I pressed closer, lowering my voice to a level only the three of us could hear, and said, I've heard you have your own exclusive method to ace exams without overdoing the drilling. Don't worry, I'm very strict about what I say to others. I just want to get through this safely. That sentence hit Aurora's ego exactly. Her greatest pride is that she supposedly holds some cheating method unknown to others, yet she pretends to be gifted and capable. At this moment, I deliberately punctured that illusion and stated I would keep the secret strictly, greatly satisfying her vanity. People kept moving around us, the noise perfectly masking our hushed conversation. After a moment of hesitation, Aurora lifted a hand as if brushing stray hair from her ear, turning slightly to block others' sight, and from an inner pocket of her uniform pulled out a very small black object. That was her custom-made miniature bone conduction earphone, completely black, smaller than a fingernail, fitting the ear so tightly that it was completely invisible. Unless you looked very closely at close range, no one would notice it. This is a special listening device I customized. It helps when hearing is poor to assist in listening to class, Aurora said offhand, giving a perfect excuse, her tone casual, but once tuned. During exams it can also pick up some outside hints for answering, with a very high accuracy. Zoe stood to the side, not the least surprised, clearly already aware, merely habitually helping Aurora hide and cover things up. I fixated on the earphone, my gaze calm, the corners of my eyes showing no fluctuation. Only I knew well that I was quietly taking note of its appearance, how it was worn, and the location of the signal receiver port. In my previous life I had never seen this earphone up close. After reincarnation, this was my first time directly facing her cheating tool, every hidden detail fully exposed before my eyes. So powerful. I pretended to show a look of surprise and delight, full of expectation. Then for tomorrow's mock exam, can I borrow it just this once? After I'm done, I'll return it immediately. I promise no one will notice. Aurora shook her head at once, pretending to be serious. No, this is a custom-made device, only compatible with my frequency band. Outsiders can't use it. Forcing it on will cause noise interference. I had long anticipated her excuse, so I followed up. So it's like that. What a pity. I thought I could share a bit of the glow, but never mind. I won't borrow it from you. If someone in our class wants to use it, would you be willing to share the frequency band? We're all classmates, taking the mock exam together. It's better than the whole class tanking. Those words instantly stirred Aurora's thoughts. She never minded using her privileges to win people over, making the whole class owe her favors, securing her position as the class goddess and all-around academic genius. Compared to helping me alone, sharing the frequency band could bring her more admiration, fully consolidating her social advantage. She hesitated for a few seconds, then slowly loosened. The frequency band can be fine-tuned to adapt. A few more people using it is no problem, as long as everyone keeps it secret and doesn't let it become known to all. I immediately pressed my advantage, deliberately increasing the volume, so nearby passing students who were listening could clearly hear. That's great. I'll go back and tell the classmates. Everyone wants to do well. They'll definitely keep it confidential and won't cause you any trouble. A few passing students paused instantly, their eyes lighting up. They gathered around them one after another. Some immediately asked if it was true. Others eagerly inquired about the adaptation method. A secret commotion swept through the corridor. Aurora didn't have time to change her statement and could only nod stiffly, still maintaining a gentle and gracious appearance on the surface. While in her heart she had already accepted the sharing of the frequency band, she reveled in the attention and gratitude of the crowd. When the 10-minute break ends, the class returns to the classroom to begin the lunchtime closed study session. The homeroom teacher is temporarily away, and the entire study room is left unsupervised, with only students buried in solving problems. The only sounds are the scratching of pen tips on paper, a perfect moment to quietly push the plan forward. The hallway gossip had already spread quietly. Most students in the class know that Aurora's micro earpiece can receive external standard answers and that she's willing to share the frequency band with classmates. Many couldn't resist the luck-driven impulse, eyes repeatedly lifting to glance at Aurora, their expressions full of urgency and expectation. I settled into my seat, lowering my head to pretend to organize the papers, waiting for the right moment. Not long after, Jake, a boy from the back row, quietly moved to my side and leaned in to ask in a low voice, "Was what I heard in the hallway just now true? Is Aurora really willing to share the earphone frequency band, so we can use it in tomorrow's mock exam as well?" Following that, several other students nearby also came over one after another, all of them average in performance, the ones most afraid of failing the mock exam, the ones who want a shortcut. They've long followed Aurora's lead, habitually relying on her connections and resources. Now that they've learned there is a cheating shortcut, their greed can no longer be concealed. I raised my eyes to look at them, my tone firm, with no flaws. "It's true, I just asked her myself. She's kind-hearted and doesn't want to see too many people in the class lag behind on the mock exams. If we all keep this strictly confidential and don't publicize it after the test, she's willing to slightly adjust the frequency band so we can all use it." Some people immediately showed concerns, whispering, "Wouldn't sharing this device among many people cause problems? The exam room has signal detection. If we're caught, the consequences would be unimaginable." This is the core concern for everyone, and it's also the breakthrough I used to break through their psychological defenses. I prepared my lines in advance, speaking calmly and decisively to dispel their doubts. "Relax. Aurora has used it for a long time without any glitch. Her device is privately customized. Ordinary shielding devices won't detect it, and she personally tested and adapted it. The more people sharing it, the more stable it will be. There will be no exposing flaws or noise problems." I deliberately heightened Aurora's credibility, leveraging everyone's trust in her as a top student to completely lower their guard. In a class where everyone already assumes Aurora is safe, reliable, and unlikely to make mistakes, any method she approves equals absolute security. The crowd's concerns instantly dissipated, replaced by strong excitement and a sense of luck. Some immediately decided to participate, others asked about wearing methods, and some volunteered to strictly keep it confidential and not drag anyone else down. In just a few minutes, more than 80 of the class volunteered, all set on relying on Aurora's micro earphone to cheat and boost scores for tomorrow's mock exam. After the crowd dispersed and everyone returned to their places, I took advantage of the lack of attention and quickly slid my fingertips over a small signal adapter prepped inside the desk. This is a simple accessory I prepared in advance after my rebirth. It's tiny enough to fit the earphone's receiving port and wouldn't be noticed by anyone. I didn't damage the device itself, only quietly altered the receiving threshold for the multi-user frequency band. When worn by a single person, the device works normally, with stable signals and no anomalies. But if more than 10 people connect to the same frequency band simultaneously, the device will automatically trigger a hidden conflict vulnerability, causing signal interference and overlap, laying the groundwork for collective failure and exposure. The entire operation was conducted stealthily and silently, with no traces. Even if professionals later examine the equipment, they won't find any evidence of tampering. Any problems will only be judged as natural faults of multi-user devices. After finishing everything, I withdrew my hand and continued to pretend to solve problems, my expression calm and composed. In the middle of the study room, tension quietly began to grow. Some students who did not win a spot, or whose relationship with Aurora had grown distant, began to secretly envy others, forming cliques to discuss in private. They worried that those who cheated would cause group score increases and widen the gap in class rankings, and jealousy and resentment simmered in their hearts. On the other side, the students who cheated also started to guard against each other, repeatedly reminding one another to keep secrets, fearing someone would leak information and mess up. They both wanted to profit from taking a shortcut and were afraid of being betrayed by classmates around them. For a time, The entire closed study room swirled with undercurrents of suspicion, greed, and a sense of luck. And the class's internal conflicts were fully intensified. Not far away, Aurora saw all of this at a glance. Not only did she fail to sense the crisis, she also thoroughly enjoyed the feeling of being adored by the whole class and relied upon by everyone. She occasionally looked up and met the grateful gazes of her classmates, and the sense of superiority in her heart swelled. As she completely immersed herself in the illusion that she controlled the situation, she even raised a hand and gave me a reassuring gesture in secret, mistakenly thinking that I truly helped her win people over and stabilize her connections. And she let down all her guards toward me. The midday self-study session ended and the campus returned to a brief jumble of noise. I carried a blank error logbook and headed straight for the teacher's office building. According to memories from my past life, this afternoon all exam invigilators would gather in the homeroom teacher's office to finalize the invigilation plan for the next day's mock exam. This was my only chance to understand the exam room's risk controls and shore up any loopholes in the plan. The corridor in the office building was quiet and cool, with few students passing by and most teachers bent over their work. I moved softly, stopping at a blind corner to the side of the homeroom teacher's office. This spot hid my line of sight, allowing me to hear every inside conversation while avoiding detection by the people inside. Inside the office, several invigilators responsible for this mock exam were seated in a circle, speaking seriously and focusing on the stringent exam rules throughout. I stood quietly outside the door, listening to every word. This mock exam is aligned with college entrance exam standards. The school will uniformly deploy a new generation of mobile signal scanners. No longer fixed shielding devices, capable of scanning by row and by seat at close range. Emphasis on strict checks for micro-invisible devices, such as bone conduction headphones and nano receivers. All conventional cheating tools are within the scope of inspection. Device clutter and signal fluctuations will trigger alarms. An additional checkpoint mechanism has been added for the second half. 1 hour into the exam, the grade-level inspection team will randomly enter the exam rooms for a non-discriminatory re-inspection. The focus is on investigating concealed equipment that was missed during previous security checks. Note: there is a mix of Chinese phrasing here. Translate as: focus on checking for covert devices missed during the initial security checks. A few simple disclosures instantly confirmed my prediction. The level of strictness for this exam was far harsher than Aurora and the whole class had imagined. The new scanners are extremely sensitive to interference from multiple devices operating on the same frequency, which also means the frequency threshold vulnerabilities I had altered would be triggered with 100 precision, leaving no room for luck. The room's conversation continued, and one teacher casually referenced past cheating investigations, mentioning that multiple devices using the same signal frequency would create additive interference. The screening equipment would instantly lock onto the entire area and accurately locate every student wearing a device. My heart settled. This was the final piece to complete my plan. A single person wearing Aurora's headset would generate weak signals with little to no interference, enough to pass the basic checks. This was the core reason she had cheating for years without being detected. But when dozens of students shared the same frequency, the cumulative interference would create abnormal signals that could not be avoided by professional equipment. Just as I was about to leave, a new variable suddenly emerged in the room's conversation, heightening the suspense in an instant. This exam will establish an integrity white list. Students who demonstrate no abnormalities, no violations, will be marked for special exemption from checks, and subsequent spot checks will be skipped, focusing on high-risk, suspicious examinees. I immediately seized the key information and quickly solidified my final self-protection plan. The existence of a whitelist is the best shield to completely remove me from the proceedings. As long as I behave properly throughout, keep a steady answering state, and have no abnormal actions, I will be placed on the exemption list. And even if a cheating chaos erupts in the hall, invigilators' eyes will never fall on me. Just as I finished collecting all the key information and prepared to retreat, a light, swift footsteps sounded behind me. Aurora's close friend Zoe headed straight toward the office, evidently there to pry for information about the invigilation situation on Aurora's behalf. I did not panic. I pressed myself against the wall, perfectly hidden by the column's blind spot. Zoe didn't notice and walked directly to the office door, raised her hand and gently rapped the door, using to discuss wrong answers as a pretext to enter. I remained in place and quietly observed. Zoe's mind is shallow. She can only grasp the surface of the stringent checks, completely unable to understand details like multi-device frequency conflicts, clutter alarms, or regional lock-ins. She would only return to tell Aurora about the exam's strict checks, but she could not articulate the core inspection principles, nor would she sense the fatal risk of many people sharing devices. After only a few minutes, Zoe emerged from the office, looking relaxed, and hurriedly left the office building. I watched her silhouette from afar, clear that she would treat the message about strict equipment inspection as nothing more than a routine warning, only making Aurora more cautious in disguising herself, and would never abandon the plan to win people over by sharing the frequency band. Once the corridor had completely returned to quiet, I slowly stepped out of the blind spot. After the last class of the afternoon ended, the school bell rang on time for dismissal. The campus crowd surged toward the gate in an instant. I shouldered my backpack and walked with the crowd toward the street corner, aiming for that long-established stationery shop. Regular exam stationery was already prepared. My purpose this trip was to purchase an ultra-thin signals table patch, to completely fix the frequency loopholes I had previously buried. This patch looks no different from ordinary transparent decorative stickers. It's affixed to the earphone receiving port, leaving no trace of modification. Yet it can precisely lock the frequency conflict threshold. When worn by a single person, there's no abnormal reaction. Once many people go online at the same time, the interference trigger speed doubles, leaving no buffer room for later exam mishaps. The evening street traffic was smooth, pedestrians sparse, and the stationery shop sat along the street with the shopfront on the ground floor. Inside, only the owner was on duty. The surveillance was old and had blind spots, making it an excellent place to handle covert accessories. I pushed the door open, the wind chime rang softly, and I headed to the innermost accessories shelf, lowering my head to pick through the stationery with natural, casual movements. I quickly found the Target transparent sticker, mixed among a pile of sticky notes and decorative stickers. I casually grabbed a few neutral pens and an eraser, slipping the sticker into ordinary stationery, with no deliberate actions across the entire process. Checking out, I paid by scanning a code. There was no real name record, and the entire process was clean and seamless. Just as I finished packing the stationery and prepared to turn and leave, a flash of movement from the corner of my eye caught sight of a figure repeatedly dodging behind the row of plane trees opposite the stationery shop. Eyes fixed on the shop door, it was Blake from my class. He's Aurora's most loyal follower, the one who runs errands, spies, and reports back for her. He's sharp-witted, highly capable, and is specifically sent by Aurora to tail me. I instantly understood. Aurora seemed to lower her guard toward me, but she was still testing me. She noticed I had acted atypically today, being proactive, drawing in contacts for her, and she harbored doubts deep inside. So she sent Blake to secretly follow me after school to observe my movements, to confirm whether I harbored ulterior motives or was secretly plotting something. I didn't panic at all. I kept a normal look, carrying the stationery bag and slowly walking out of the stationery shop, deliberately slowing my pace, neither dodging nor hiding. Blake hid behind a tree, thinking he was well concealed, still secretly watching. I simply stopped, turned my back on the street, and organized the stationery bag, exposing the contents of plain, uniform exam stationery, neutral pens, erasers, answer sheets and ruler packages, all clearly visible, with no suspicious devices or electronic accessories. That patch was as thin as a cicada's wing, adhered to the inner side of the ruler, completely invisible to the naked eye. I deliberately pretended to be casually browsing, head bent to look at stationery, occasionally lifting my hand to tidy my backpack, maintaining a calm expression with no trace of guilt or unease. Blake observed for a while, but found nothing unusual. Finally, he could no longer resist approaching, pretending to have an accidental encounter and starting a conversation. "Lyra, you came specifically after school to buy exam stationery. You even changed to new gear for tomorrow's mock exam." I raised my eyes and replied lightly, with a calm, natural tone. "Old pens don't write well. I'm just getting a few new ones. Stocking up some stationery for temporary use." Blake's eyes quickly scanned the contents of my stationery bag, one by one, and did not find anything suspicious. He was initially ordered by Aurora to find a handle to prove my covert scheming and private gain, to justify his mistrust. But what he saw before him was only the most ordinary exam prep stationery, with no irregularities. He was unwilling to give up and pressed further. Aren't you buying anything else? Tomorrow's exam is coming up. Do you really plan to rely on yourself to take it? Won't you join us? I lowered my eyes in response, showing a hint of helplessness and tense edge, perfectly fitting my usual shy, inferior character. I don't dare. The exam is so strictly checked. If I'm caught, it would be not worth it. If my foundation is weak and I perform poorly anyway, I won't risk cheating. I'll just answer honestly. This sentence completely dispelled Blake's last doubts, in his and Aurora's ingrained perception. I am timid and cautious, living by the rules, with no courage to touch the exam boundary, nor any thought of scheming against them. Blake fully lowered his guard, chatted perfunctorily for a couple of sentences, then turned to leave, ready to report back to Aurora that there was nothing unusual throughout, just solid preparation for the exam. Watching his hurried silhouette disappear, I put away all traces of disguise. Blake's tracking probe, though seemingly a crisis, was in fact completely transformed by me into cover. This perfect record of no abnormality will cause Aurora to completely drop all defenses against me. Believing that I merely want to study steadily and pose no threat, I raised my hand to touch the invisible patch on the inside of the ruler. All modification parts were in place, and the frequency band loopholes were completely sealed. The next morning, before the voluntary study period officially began, the homeroom teacher Mr. White stepped into the classroom early and held a pre-exam special class meeting. He had 8 large characters written on the blackboard by his own hand. Integrity in examinations. Violations investigated. The stern, tidy handwriting instantly subdued the loose atmosphere in the classroom, and the entire room fell silent. The high-pressure pre-exam mood hitting everyone. Mr. White, holding a file on exam rolls, read aloud, point by point, the stringent checks for this mock exam, repeatedly emphasizing the consequences of signal scanning, spot checks, disciplinary actions, and record keeping. His tone severe with no loosening. The whole class held their breath. Many students who had participated in the cheating plan looked tense, instinctively glancing at each other, a trace of panic in their eyes. Only Aurora sat upright, calm and composed, with a light smile throughout. Appearing confident and in control, she had long believed her equipment wouldn't fail, and didn't pay attention to the teacher's strict checks at all, viewing them as routine pre-exam deterrents. After the briefing, Mr. White, out of habit, looked toward Aurora and named her to serve as the class representative to share pre-exam mindset and discipline. This is the teacher's long-standing favoritism. In any activity, Aurora is always the class benchmark in face. Aurora stood up, her posture erect, her voice clear and pleasant, her words proper, perfectly handling the persona of an exemplary student. With the college entrance examination approaching, every mock exam is a chance to test oneself. Scores are important, but integrity always comes first. I insist on answering independently, preparing diligently, and I hope everyone will adhere to the bottom line, refuse luck, and take every exam seriously. The pompous speech won her public praise from the homeroom teacher and won the whole class's agreement. Everyone was deceived by her pure, well-behaved image. No one knew that in her pocket she carried cheating earphones to be shared with the whole class. At the end of her speech, Aurora shifted her tone slightly, her gaze gently sweeping to me, her voice carrying veiled contempt and sarcasm. In this class, some students don't strive hard in ordinary times, and should not fantasize about taking shortcuts before exams. Rather than harboring bad intentions, it's better to honestly do practice questions. Otherwise, in the end you'll only gain little and waste the exam opportunity for nothing. This remark was highly targeted, and the whole class immediately directed their eyes onto me. In our previous life, she relied on this kind of public undermining to label me as a desperate for shortcuts student in advance, paving the way for later false accusations of cheating. The surrounding murmurs grew, with many students' eyes filled with ridicule, watching with interest, assuming I was the delinquent she claimed wanted to cheat. I did not raise my head to argue, nor did I show any displeasure, continuing to lower my head to read the examination instructions on the desk, appearing compliant and well-behaved, playing to everyone's preconceived notions. Mr. White, noticing this, seized the moment to chide me a bit. Lyra, your foundation is weak, so you must keep a proper mindset and take the exam seriously. without any crooked thoughts. One violation can affect your future college entrance exam. I nodded slightly, my voice gentle and obedient. I understand, teacher. I will take the exam properly and will not violate the rules. The humble, compliant attitude made everyone completely stop paying attention to me. In the eyes of the teachers and the class, I am merely a timid, honest, uncalculated ordinary student who can only quietly follow guidance, unable to cause any trouble. Aurora, seeing me surrender and remain silent, felt even more triumphant, completely letting go of the last shred of caution. She was sure my closeness yesterday was merely a request for help, and today's compliance showed only cowardice, completely unaware that I had quietly laid a trap. In the latter half of the class meeting, Mr. White left some free time for reminders, allowing students to remind each other about exam discipline. Many people gathered around Aurora, whispering to confirm that the headset frequency band was shared. Speaking in an anxious tone, Aurora, while fending off the teacher's gaze, quietly nodded in agreement, even signaling a reassuring gesture with her hand, secretly assuring everyone that the equipment was absolutely secure and would not cause any problems. The pre-exam class meeting ended, and the broadcast rang on time to announce the examinees' entry. All senior 3 students carried their admission tickets and pencil cases, lining up in orderly rows to proceed to the standardized exam hall. The corridor held straight lines, the sound of footsteps formed into waves, and the solemn exam atmosphere pressed tightly on the breath. I clutched a clean, transparent pencil case, inside containing only basic exam supplies, with no electronic devices at all, and moved forward with the queue at a measured pace. Most of the students around me had nervous expressions. Many had their fingertips slightly tensed, and concealed in their eyes were hidden unease and anticipation. All that unease stemmed from the covert micro-earpieces inside their ears. In the brief minutes of the gap, Aurora had already pre-tuned the equipment frequencies for the students involved in cheating in the entire class, connecting them to her exclusive signal channel. Dozens of hidden earpieces were quietly tucked into the ear cavities of students in every class, with no one noticing. The exam hall entrance had dual security checkpoints. 2 proctors held portable metal scanners and signal detectors, inspecting each person to prevent any cheating devices from entering. The rules were strict. Every candidate had to raise their arms and turn around for a full body scan. The line moved slowly forward. The front row students passed one by one. Aurora walked near the front of the line, calm, natural, and confident, cooperating with the security checks in a manner. The scanner swept over her ears, neck, and hair, with no abnormalities, and she passed through smoothly. Trailing close behind were Zoe, Blake, and the other students involved in cheating, who stepped forward in sequence. In a single person wearing state, the micro-earpiece signals are very weak. The metal response is faint, just at the threshold value of the equipment detection, which is enough to perfectly evade the basic security screening. Everyone passed the security checks one after another. The taut nerves finally relaxed, and the luck that had been hiding in their hearts outweighed their concerns. They were convinced that Aurora's device was absolutely safe. So-called strict inspections were only a formality, and this cheating would be a sure win. It wasn't long before it was my turn for security checks. I raised my arms in a neat, compliant pose, letting the scanner sweep over my entire body. The detector stayed steady with no fluctuations and no alarm signals. The proctor glanced at my pencil case, then raised a hand to let me through. Just as I was turning to step into the exam hall, the detector behind me suddenly gave a slight buzz, its indicator light flashing twice quickly, then returning to normal. The momentary anomaly caught the proctor's attention, and he immediately halted my steps. "Hold on. Come back for a recheck. There is a weak signal fluctuation on you." As soon as the words were spoken, the students in the queue around me shifted their gazes. Those who had just entered were also leaning forward to observe, and the whole atmosphere tightened in an instant. Everyone's eyes fixed on me, with expressions of doubt and curiosity. Aurora, who had just entered the front row, looked back as well, a sly smile curving at the corner of her lips, evidently convinced that I had ulterior motives, secretly carrying cheating devices, and waiting to see me fail on the spot. I paused where I stood, my expression calm and unflustered, and I deliberately opened my hands to cooperate with the recheck. The proctor held a device, scanning against my hair, collar, pockets, and pencil case repeatedly, with no signal fluctuation or metallic reaction at any point. I spoke up willingly, my tone soft and straightforward. Teacher, I've only brought ordinary stationery with me. There are no electronic devices. It might be a result of overlapping electronic signals from people nearby, causing a momentary false reading by the instrument. The teacher compared the instrument data. There was indeed no sustained abnormality, nor any residual device signals. Coupled with my previously well-behaved conduct in the class meeting and the favorable groundwork of the whitelist pre-selection, the teacher quickly ruled out any suspicion of me. With the exam about to begin and many candidates queued up, the teacher did not have time to debate a fleeting instrument false alarm and simply waved me through. Go in then. Next time, be sure not to carry any electronic items. I nodded slightly in acknowledgement and stepped into the exam hall calmly, my back still straight and untroubled. Only I understand that the brief fluctuation just now was the initial signal superposition caused by dozens of devices on the same frequency band starting up simultaneously in close proximity, which merely triggered a faint anomaly in advance without being completely exposed. This was also part of my planned controllable suspense, a false alarm in a recheck that instead solidified my image as an upright, rule-abiding candidate, causing the invigilator to lower all vigilance toward me and directly place me into the exempt from inspection zone. The following students entered and still all passed smoothly, with no one triggering any early warning again. Everyone thought the previous instrument mistouch was an accident. No one anticipated it was the cumulative hidden danger of cheating devices, and even less noticed that this was merely a prelude to the exam room's failure. With everyone seated, the exam hall doors slowly closed, the invigilator distributed the papers, and the monitoring was calibrated. The standardized exam room officially entered testing mode. The neat exam hall, the orderly desks, the stern monitoring equipment, everything appeared to be orderly and well regulated. Dozens of students had cheating devices hidden in their oracles, harboring a false hope that the answers would be transmitted. Aurora sat upright in her seat, with an elegant, calm posture, already prepared to receive external answers and transmit them in sync. The exam papers were quickly distributed, and the crisp exam bell rang through the entire teaching building. The proctor stood at the center of the podium, reiterating the exam rules, his gaze slowly sweeping across the hall, and the solemn atmosphere made everyone in the room afraid to move. I lowered my head to review the question types, held my pen with composure, and began answering at my own pace. The types on the page were familiar, the key points clear. I remained fully focused on the answers, my movements smooth and natural, with no hesitation. In the monitors and teacher's sight, I was just a diligent, serious exam taker, but the atmosphere around me was completely different. Most of the students around me held their pens, hovering them in midair, their eyes wandering. Not a single person took the initiative to solve the problems. Everyone was quietly waiting for the signal from the headset in their ears. 5 minutes after the exam began, Aurora started the equipment on time. She had already connected with off-site personnel and began transmitting standard answers to each question, a faint sound traveling along a unified frequency into the ears of every student wearing headphones. In the silent exam hall, countless people suddenly became alert, their tense nerves completely relaxing. They bent their heads to copy the answers quickly, the handwriting sloppy and chaotic, only intent on rapid replication, completely abandoning independent thinking. Students who were originally bottom-ranked wrote faster, while those with average ability went as far as skipping the review of the questions and copied the transmitted content wholesale. For a moment, the entire area was left with only the sound of dense pen tips scratching, forming a stark contrast with my orderly writing rhythm. At first, everything seemed smooth, with no anomalies. Everyone was immersed in the pleasure of effortless gains, secretly congratulating themselves for hitching a ride on Aurora's success. Convinced that this mock exam would easily reverse their rankings, Aurora sat in a front-row seat, pretending to answer slowly while steadily controlling the signal transmission pace, imagining that she controlled the whole scene and could secretly enjoy the thrill of manipulating everyone. The calm state lasted less than 20 minutes before a crisis suddenly arrived. 2 proctors, who were originally stationed at the podium and in the back corner, unexpectedly switched to random inspection mode, one on each side, slowly walking along the aisles row by row, closely inspecting the students' answering state. This sudden inspection action was beyond anyone's expectation and instantly disrupted everyone's rhythm. Those copying answers froze in panic. Most people's hands stiffened, their bodies instinctively tensing, their heads afraid to turn, their eyes flickering in confusion. Some had no time to collect the sloppy copying marks, and some had answer progress that was abnormally abrupt and inconsistent with their usual level of study. Obvious flaws to the eye. Zoe on the left side was the most panicked. She was too eager, mindlessly copying the answers throughout, solving at speeds far beyond normal, and her on-paper logic was completely chaotic. When the proctor came to her side, he paused and looked down at her paper, staying for several seconds. Zoe stiffened, held her breath, and dared not move at all. A fine layer of cold sweat forming on her forehead. Everyone wearing headphones in the hall tensed up with her, fearing that the teacher would continue the inspection, each of them slipping into a panic of potential exposure. Across the aisle, Blake was similarly precarious. His mentality was restless, copying without any method. He had completed all the multiple-choice questions, but left the longer problems entirely blank, an extremely abnormal on-paper state that was highly recognizable. The proctor's gaze swept over him, his brows slightly furrowed, and he raised his hand to move closer to his paper, seemingly preparing to conduct a thorough check. The atmosphere in the hall instantly grew oppressive. Everyone believed that someone would be caught at any moment, triggering a chain reaction of exposure. At this critical moment, the proctor's radio suddenly crackled with static as the grade-level team temporarily notified a check of the number of people in the exam room and an update of the inspection list. Briefly interrupting the inspection rhythm, the two teachers could only pause their patrols, turn back to the podium, and verify the information. The extreme crisis was narrowly averted, and the entire hall cheaters included secretly breathed a sigh of relief, their backs already drenched in cold sweat. After the narrow escape from disaster, no one chose to stop at the right time. Instead, they grew greedier. They believed it was just an accident, and with caution they could last until the exam ended, still clinging to ready-made high-scoring answers, bowing their heads again to quickly transcribe content. No one noticed that the recent close-range crowding and everyone continuously receiving signals had already caused the frequency interference to accumulate. The threshold I had set in advance was continuously gathering power, and the level of signal chaos was growing more severe. With only one final step separating it from a full eruption, Aurora remained unaware, still transmitting answers steadily, even secretly gloating, thinking the whole class relied on her to secure the scores. Herself the invisible puppeteer of this exam, she completely had no idea that every time her signal was transmitted, she was contributing to everyone's downfall. I have consistently kept a steady pace in answering, with neat handwriting, reasonable progress, and a state that perfectly matches a normal examinee. The invigilator, catching my eye several times, simply brushed past me. Exams were over halfway when the originally tense but steady atmosphere in the exam room was torn apart by a rush of corridor footsteps. The classroom door was pushed open directly. 3 grade-level inspectors carrying professional signal scanners and metal detectors strode in, with no prior notice. The lead grade-level supervisor wore a grave expression, spoke in a low, solemn tone, and announced on the spot the directive for a surprise recheck. Upon receiving the school-wide strict inspection notice, this examination room will undergo a second security screening. The focus is on detecting hidden electronic cheating devices. Everyone must remain in place. Do not move. Do not look down. Do not cover the ears. The moment these words fell, most of the examinees' bodies stiffened instantly. The lucky mindset that had just evaded a round of inspections collapsed, and the fear in their hearts consumed everyone, making the air suddenly suffocating. I sat upright in my seat, the tip of my pen still steady on the exam paper, my answering pace unchanged. My eyes remained on the page, but my peripheral vision clearly caught the irregular movements across the entire area. All the students wearing miniature earpieces trembled at their fingertips, breathed deliberately lightly, and their bodies instinctively tensed into stiffness, each one slipping into extreme panic. Aurora's movements also abruptly stall. She finally sensed something was wrong and for the first time felt a strong unease in her heart. Normally she used the device alone, signals clean and stable. Never having encountered a high-pressure recheck, nor having experienced the hidden risks of dozens of people sharing the same frequency band, she instinctively wanted to cut the signal and terminate transmission. But it was too late. The inspectors quickly divided the labor. 2 in the left and right aisles, holding scanners to advance slowly row by row, with the devices in the highest sensitivity mode throughout. The moment the instruments stepped into the central area of the class, The screen data wildly jumped, and the piercing buzz of interference surged, clearly cutting through the quiet exam room. Continuous, dense, wide-ranging signal anomalies instantly locked onto most of the exam room. The next second, bizarre situations erupted collectively. All the students in miniature earpieces no longer transmitted standard answers. Instead, they emitted sharp, piercing electrical noise, disordered frequency noise, and the sharp hissing sounds exploded around each person's ears. The pre-buried frequency loophole I planted triggered completely. The multi-person simultaneous interference broke through the threshold, the devices malfunctioned, and the previously hidden cheating signals could no longer be concealed, fully exposed under the professional detection equipment. The nearest Zoe could not hold out first. Her head shook violently, instinctively raising a hand to press against her ear to suppress the harsh buzzing. This abnormal panic drew the attention of all the teachers at once. "That student, hands off. Sit up straight and don't move," the grade-level supervisor shouted sternly, quickly stepping beside Zoe. As the scanner approached the side of Zoe's ear, the alarm blared. Red lights flashed frantically, and the high-frequency signal anomaly locked onto the target. The teacher leaned down immediately, parting Zoe's hair behind her ear to reveal a small black micro-earphone, a slam-damming piece of evidence. No room for denial. Zoe's face turned deathly pale, her body trembled, and she froze in her seat, without even the energy to argue. With that first breakthrough, the inspection sped up significantly. The teachers checked each student in signal-dense areas, and as the scanner approached each student, it triggered alarms. The repeated alarms and the harsh electrical buzzing filled the entire classroom. Blake was subsequently exposed. The miniature earphone in his ear lay bare for all to see. Then, the classmates involved in cheating were named, checked, and documented one after another. Within just 2 minutes, more than 20 students were revealed. With none spared, the normally quiet exam room became a complete mess. The examined students' faces were pale and they kept their heads down in silence. The remaining students who hadn't been caught had their mentality completely collapsed. Some panicked and removed their earphones in an atom point to hide. Others trembled all over, confused and at a loss. As a flurry of anxious little actions emerged one after another, the more panicked they were, the more flaws appeared. All actions attempting to remove, cover, or conceal devices only made it easier for the teachers to locate targets. The cheating ring in the entire examination hall was cleared one by one, with no one able to escape by luck. In the end, all signal sources were traced to Aurora seated in the front row of the class. When the inspecting teacher approached her seat with the instrument, the device data spiked immediately. The signal strength far exceeded that of all other students and was the source of the entire field's cheating devices. The instrument kept a stable alert with no deviation, and the ironclad evidence pointed squarely at Aurora. Aurora panicked completely. Her previously gentle and composed persona collapsed. Her eyes filled with fear and disarray, and her fingers trembled uncontrollably. She hurriedly raised her hand to excuse herself, her tone chaotic and fractured. "Teacher, it's not me. I don't know why this is happening. My device is just a normal hearing aid. I'm not cheating, and I didn't pass answers to anyone." She rushed to dissociate herself, desperately denying everything, trying to pull herself out of this collective cheating scandal. But the instrument does not lie. All students' cheating devices are bound to her exclusive frequency band. The signal traces and device connections are all clear and traceable, and all evidence indisputably shows that she is the mastermind behind this group cheating. The proctor's face turned cold as he cut off her defense on the spot. "All cheating device signals share the same source. All from your private band. There's only this one set in the entire school and you still want to deny it." Aurora's pupils dilated, and she became completely speechless. The examination room order had completely spiraled out of control. The proctor immediately halted all answering, ordering all students suspected of cheating to stand and line up for documentation and registration. The harsh alarm from the devices gradually quieted, but the panic and despair filling the room still tightly enveloped the entire classroom. More than 20 students wearing earpieces who cheated stood rigidly from their seats, their faces ashen. Some clenched the corners of their clothes. Others trembled uncontrollably. Everyone's sense of luck had been utterly shattered, leaving only real fear. Only I remained calmly in my original position. After finishing the final answers, I lowered my pen calmly, placed my hands neatly on the desk, and fully cooperated with the exam room rules, appearing straightforward and well-behaved. Multiple device scans showed zero anomalies, with no signs of panic throughout, and the speed of answering was normal, which led the invigilators to clearly categorize me as a compliant student. The teachers produced registration forms and documentation devices, taking photos and recording disciplinary information for each student in line. The mini earpieces were collected, stored, and sealed uniformly, each device clearly linked to Aurora's exclusive frequency band, forming a complete chain of evidence. At first, everyone still harbored a small fantasy that collective cheating wouldn't be blamed on the group. If they spoke with a unified stance, they might receive a lighter punishment. But when the teacher clearly announced that this case would be a school-level case for stringent scrutiny, and that all disciplinary acts would be recorded and added to the integrity file, the crowd instantly collapsed. The first to break was Zoe. She was closest to Aurora and had thought she would profit by following the class beauty. Now she had to bear cheating penalties and immediately lost face. Her eyes reddened, and her voice quivered with collapsed accusation as she pointed directly at Aurora. It was her who opened the frequency band for us to use. She told us the equipment was absolutely safe and wouldn't be detected. She lied to everyone. This sentence acted like a fuse, instantly igniting everyone's emotions. The previously silent classmates began to turn on each other, suppressing fear and anger fully erupting. Blake first echoed, his tone full of unwillingness and blame. That's right. Aurora was in charge throughout. She promised to help us raise our scores, guaranteed the equipment had no loopholes. And only then did we dare take the risk. Now that something happened, we can't let us bear the responsibility alone. For a moment, the accusations resounded throughout the room. All students involved in cheating, without exception, directed their blame at Aurora. No one remembered the usual flattery or considered classmates' friendship anymore. Everyone only wanted to absolve themselves of guilt and shift all responsibility onto the mastermind of this cheating scandal. Aurora, once exalted and sought after by the whole class, instantly became the target of everyone's attacks, standing alone at the front of the line as people publicly accused, blamed, and shifted responsibility onto her. Aurora's face turned deathly pale, her eyes reddened, and the once gentle, poised appearance was gone. Her voice trembled with panic as she tried to defend herself. I didn't lie to you. My devices are safe for individual use and never cause problems. I don't know why sharing them triggers a probe. I'm also a victim. Her defense was pale and weak, and no one believed her. Everyone only knew that it was her cheating devices, her exclusive frequency band, and her promise of safety. Now that everyone had turned against her, she must bear all the consequences. The proctor watched this farce with a cold eye, fully understanding the situation as it unfolded. He immediately determined the core allocation of responsibility. All device provenance, signal records, and origin bindings pointed to Aurora. She was the mastermind organizer and supplier of equipment for this large-scale cheating operation. The rest of the students were merely following others and trusting others. They were also disobedient and punished. But their guilt was far lighter than Aurora's. In order to strive for lighter penalties, more and more students proactively spoke up to provide evidence, repeating in detail the entire process of how Aurora lured everyone, promised safety, and opened the frequency bands before the exam, with complete details and a unified account, thoroughly establishing Aurora's leading responsibility. In the chaotic scene, everyone was some arguing, shifting blame, presenting evidence, while I remained on the outside, quietly sitting in my seat, waiting for the exam to end. Throughout, no one suspected me. No one linked me to this collective cheating. Some students even subconsciously ignored my presence, focusing on clashing with Aurora. In everyone's perception, I was just a timid, obedient ordinary student who dared not cross the line, utterly incapable of orchestrating such a sweeping comeback that involved the whole class. The proctor scanned the room, confirming that all disciplined students had been registered. Only I and a few other clean students who did not participate in cheating remained with no violations at all, allowed to stay in place and wait for the exam to finish. Aurora looked at the calm, clean me, and a flicker of doubt suddenly flashed in her eyes. She remembered my proactive attempt to cling to her yesterday, to help her recruit connections, but it was quickly overwhelmed by the current panic and fear. Unable to grasp any suspicious clues, she could not understand why her perfectly cheating method would fail collectively, nor why everyone else got into trouble while I, who had been close to her and knew the inside story from start to finish, walked away clean and unscathed. But there was no time for her to think things through. The teacher issued an on-the-spot order. All cheating students must stop the exam, confiscate the test papers uniformly, and go to the homeroom teacher's office for further accountability and punishment. A group of people walked out of the exam room dejectedly, muttering complaints at each other. The remaining innocent examinees stopped writing and handed in their papers uniformly. I collected the papers and stationery, followed the crowd out of the examination hall, and headed straight to the homeroom teacher's office. The entire teaching building gradually regained order. But our class's discipline scandal had already spread through the whole school. In the corridors, teachers and students passing by whispered discussions, eyes turning toward the students in our class involved in the cheating. The atmosphere inside the office was extremely oppressive. More than 20 students involved in cheating stood neatly in a row, heads bowed in silence. None dared to speak up in defense. Aurora stood at the very front alone, back stiff, face as pale as paper, no longer the bright, confident person she used to be. Mr. White sat at the desk, gripping a thick disciplinary register and a sealed micro-earpiece. His face pallid and his whole body radiating anger. The grade-level head sat nearby, overseeing the entire process of the accountability for this major collective cheating incident, with a stern attitude and no room for tolerance. I quietly walked into the office, stood in the corner as a clean bystander, observing the entire process. The grade-level head spoke first and announced the preliminary findings on the spot. This is a case of collective cheating by Class 7 of the 3rd year. All devices involved emitted signals from a single source, and the only registered signal holder was Aurora, who privately modified the device's frequency band and opened a cheating channel to the outside, leading several classmates to follow along in dishonesty. It was a serious, severely negative cheating incident with significant impact. The moment the results were announced, all students present completely gave up resistance. To lessen their own punishment, everyone rushed to testify and shifted all responsibility onto Aurora. Zoe stepped forward first. In a hurried tone, "Teacher, I was deceived by her. She repeatedly guaranteed the device was safe and wouldn't be detected by the instruments, and she even invited us to use it together. I was confused and made a mistake." Blake followed with additional testimony, exposing all details of the pre-exam manipulation and private promises. The other students echoed, their statements highly consistent, each sentence corroborating that Aurora deliberately led the cheating. With one voice from many, all evidence and all witness statements pointed to Aurora. She was completely abandoned by all. Those who once surrounded her had now become witnesses against her. Aurora trembled all over, looked up with red eyes, and her voice hoarse as she defended herself. "That's not how it was. I didn't intend to induce cheating. I was just sharing the device. I didn't know that many people would use it together would cause a problem. I was set up." Mr. White interrupted her with a severe tone, his eyes full of disappointment and anger. In the past, he favored this well-behaved, excellent class Belle. Now he hated this vile cheating incident with the same intensity. "The device is your exclusive customization. You control the frequency band. Everyone participated in cheating because of your promise, your device, and your invitation, and you're still shirking responsibility. I used to place great trust in you and favored you often. Is this how you repay the class and the school?" The teacher's rebuke left Aurora speechless, tears uncontrollably sliding down. Pitiable and desolate, the persona, networks, and halo she once relied on shattered completely in the face of hard evidence and everyone's testimony. To thoroughly determine whether there was an underlying mastermind behind the incident, Mr. White questioned each student present, checking for any other participants in the planning. Everyone unanimously asserted that only Aurora led the entire affair. There was no second person involved. Someone unconsciously mentioned that I had helped relay information about the frequency band. As soon as the words fell, I calmly spoke up, gentle and straightforward, without a flaw. "Teacher, I only overheard during a break that Aurora had an aid device for studying. Classmates were curious and asked questions, and I simply helped relay the information, repeatedly reminding everyone to observe exam rules and not to risk breaking the rules. I have never participated in equipment debugging. I did not know there was any cheating function, and I certainly did not engage in any fraudulent behavior. My defense was reasonable and forthright, my attitude innocent and candid. With no equipment, no signal logs, and no traces of misconduct throughout the process, the teacher immediately dispelled all doubts. Yesterday's message passing act would only be defined as ordinary chatter among classmates, and had nothing to do with deliberate cheating. By contrast, Aurora cannot explain why the exclusive frequency band leaked, cannot explain long-term private cheating, and cannot explain why she alone knows all the details of the equipment. All questions could ultimately be borne only by her. In the end, the school officially issued a disciplinary decision. Aurora, as the core organizer of this collective cheating, the situation was extremely serious, publicly criticized across the school, recorded in the college entrance examination integrity file, all scores of this mock exam cancelled, and she was deprived of all remaining opportunities for high school honors, recommendations, and extra points. The other 20-some classmates who followed the cheating were all given severe disciplinary sanctions at the class level, their quantified scores deducted. This exam's results nullified, and kept under observation. Only I remained completely clean, with no disciplinary actions, no stains, deemed a model student of discipline by the school, unaffected by this storm. Once the disciplinary decision was implemented, Aurora collapsed completely. She looked up at me, calm and unscathed, with eyes full of resentment and doubt. She could not understand why the cheating methods she carefully concealed would completely collapse when the class shared them, why everyone else fell, while the once cowardly and humble me walked away clean and unscathed. But she had no evidence, no clues pointing to me. All suspicions were in vain. This shortcut dream she herself started ultimately became the abyss that buried her. The office accountability farce ended, and a group of dejected classmates slowly filed out. Those who once banded together to ostracize me and curry favor to commit wrongdoing paid the price for their greed and blindness. All the injustices, slanders, and grievances that weighed on me in a previous life were settled at this moment. I stepped out of the office slowly, the corridor's breeze brushing my face, my eyes calm. I never acted to harm others. I merely let their own greed make them pay for their past misdeeds. Through a rebirth, I ended my tragic fate, ripped the mask from the hypocrites, crushed everyone's luck and prejudice. From now on, the path ahead is clear, the stigma dissipates, and a brand new life of mine begins.